So welcome to part 5 of our look at Operation Tonga. In part 1 we looked at some of the important headquarters that were involved in the planning of D-Day. In part 2 we looked at how John Howard was selected. We've got Operations Biz and Operations Mush. We looked at the 6th Airborne's planning headquarters at Broadmoor in Durrington. And in part, we also had a look at their exercises when they used the bridges in Exeter to plan their operation. In part 4 we just looked at the planning and the route that they are taking to get to Normandy, and we're currently flying over the English Channel. We're about 20 minutes from letting the glider go. So we're halfway over the English Channel right now. In summary about the route, it was a route taken from RAF Tarrant Rushton, and according to Private Denis Edwards, the gliders were towed by Halifaxes headed to the northeast and likely to some beacon where they could form up with bomber formations. I believe that they probably, he said that they crossed the channel somewhere around Worthing. It makes sense that it was probably Shoreham, because as you can see from Shoreham, which is the Echo Golf Kilo Alpha airfield, it's almost a direct southerly route down to their objective. So it was a right-hand turn at Echo Golf Lima Foxtrot, which is Farnborough, and then it was directly south from Shoreham, which is Echo Golf Kilo Alpha, and it keeps the errors to the minimum by keeping things simple. What I'm going to plan to do in this part is we're going to look at the approach into the coast, see if we can spot likely places where they were released in their gliders. Now, before we do that, I thought I'd take the opportunity to read Denis Edwards' description of the actual landing, and so that you've got it in mind when we get there. So he was this is taken from his book, and there's also the devil made what was his book called again? The Devil's something. I'm gonna have to find it now. Recommended reading. So it's The Devil's Own Luck, Pegasus Bridge to the Baltic, 1944-45. It's his book, and this is the passage that he wrote concerning what we're about to experience right now. As we drew level with the thickest of the flak and were beginning to make out the coastline, there came the familiar twang and jerk of the tow rope, followed by almost total silence, which, from past experience, told us that we had parted company from the towing bomber. While in tow, there had been a continuous high-pitched scream of wind, forcing its way through the cracks and crevices in the thin fabric covering the wooden fuselage. The noise was increased by the fact that the door had been opened to facilitate rapid exit once we landed. And as we approached the coast, the order was given to keep quiet. Hardly a sound could be heard as the bombers flew onwards on a diversionary inland bombing mission. From this, from other accounts, they were singing. They obviously had a lot of energy. We're trying to get rid of. But it definitely sounds like they could hear flak being fired, so there must have been maybe some aircraft ahead of them that was taking some flak. But it was definitely looked like it was when it was something about the coastline where it was the point where they would be released. And he continues, immediately after cast off, we had gone into a steep dive, a manoeuvre that had more than one purpose. Firstly, of course, the pilots knew exactly where we were and exactly the point we had to reach. Having no alternative to descend, we had to lose height at a rate which would allow us to arrive at the landing zone alongside the bridges with no further height to lose. To arrive at the landing zone while still too high and then circling around to lose height is not a good idea, especially when you're being shot at. Secondly, the German flak was ranged to the bomber formation, and rapid descent took us away from the immediate danger of flak damage. And thirdly, it was hoped that observers on the ground would assume that the rapidly descending glider was a crippled bomber on its way down. And from around 6,000 feet we plummeted earthwards at what felt to us like breakneck speed until we were within 1,000 feet of the ground, where we levered out to glide more slowly down and take 2 sweeping right turns to position ourselves for the run into the landing zone. So that's his immediate approach. He will go on to describe the actual landing. Just make sure we got the time. Yeah, okay. So he then goes on to describe the actual landing. So with our bodies tensed and weapons tightly gripped, the senior pilot, Staff Sergeant Jim Wallwork, yelled "Link arms." And we knew that at any moment we would touch down. They just paused there. They linked arms and raised their legs off the ground. The time was, he believes, was 0 hour 15, so 15:15 midnight. They all held tight and braced themselves for touchdown. There was the usual slight bump, small jerk, and a much heavier thump, and as the glider made contact with the ground, but only for a moment, it jerked again, shuddered, left the ground for a second or two, bumped over the rough surface, and lurched forward like a bucking bronco. We sped forward, bounced up and down on our hard wooden seats as the vehicle lost contact with the ground, and then came down again with another heavy thump, a tug and a jerk. And for a few moments it appeared that we were in for a comparatively smooth landing. But just as that thought flashed through my mind, the darkness was suddenly filled with a stream of brilliant sparks as the glider lost its wheels and the skid hit something stony ground. There followed the sound like a giant canvas sheet being viciously ripped apart, and then a mighty crash like a clap of thunder. And my body seemed to be moving in several directions at once. Moments later the crippled glider skidded and bounded over the uneven ground to slide finally to a shuddering halt, whereupon I found myself perched in a very strange position at an uneven angle. I peered into a misty blue and greyish haze. From somewhere out in endless space there zoomed towards me a long tracer-like stream of multicoloured light, like a host of shooting stars that moved towards me at high speed. I realised after a moment that I was not being shot at, I was simply concussed and seeing stars. The noise from the landing had ceased very suddenly and was replaced by an ominous silence. No one stirred, nothing moved. My immediate thought was, God help me, we must all be dead. The impact was so hard, and that was Private Denis Edwards. I've got a picture of him actually. Let's show you a picture of the guy. That's Monty. This is him. This is Denis Edwards. So the impact was so hard that several of the people in that glider, their watches stopped. And this is why we know that it was. They landed at 16 minutes past midnight. So let's get ready. So we're coming in now. We're approaching Cabourg. We're approaching the coast. So this is going to be an interesting exercise because I want you to imagine just being in a glider and landing. I mean, that's that's nerve-wracking enough. But say it's now a glider with a 8-foot wingspan with 30 guys in it. It's made out of wood. It's made out of plywood, and you're going to be nervous about landing that thing anyway. But then. Imagine it's at night. That would just notch it up another level. You then you're coming in to land on a very short, tight landing strip. So that's ramping it up another level. Then you've been told that there's the possibility or the likelihood even that someone has put posts in the field where you're going to land to stop you from landing. And these posts can rip off the wings. It could, if it hits the front of the thing, it could be game over. So that's bad enough. But you can also hear the pilot of the glider joking, okay, that's fine, because we need to slow down anyway. You've also got your commander with you who wants the pilot to hit the fence at the end of the field. So we're going to be crashing. So that's pretty bad. Oh, and by the way, you're landing in enemy territory. So when you do crash, no one's going to come and help you. In fact, they're going to shoot you. They're going to shoot at you. Just before they embarked back at RAF Tarrant Rushton, D Company had a guy just run away from the glider. He just had this premonition that he was going to die and just would rather face court-martial. And there's several reports of this happening all over the sort of the D-Day camps. So at this point, I have tons of admiration for these guys, and we're going to be talking about obviously this guy here, John Howard. This is Lieutenant Den Brotheridge. He's the officer in charge of 1st Platoon. This is Windy Gale. We've got Denis Edwards. This is the pilot, Staff Sergeant Jim Wallwork. He's going to be taking us in. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate this operation. We're going to have a guess at where they most likely were released. I've got a flight plan here. We're going to be approaching the coast. We're going to see if we can identify the estuary of the Orne. We know maybe even recognize the estuary of the Dives River, and I believe from reports that there was a, no, I wouldn't say a gap, but less of a flak somewhere around Cabourg. We're going to release our glider. We're going to cut the engines and pretend to be a glider from the coastline. We're going to head south. We'll do a 90-degree turn, and then we're going to come back up. Now, I can tell you now, this is probably not going to be as good as Sergeant Jim Wallwork. Just saying. But so here we go. We're approaching the coast now. We can see the coast here. These are the lights of northern France. Right ahead of us would be Ouistreham. So straight ahead of us here will be Ouistreham. This gap to the left of the lights is probably the estuary, and we've got lights on the left here, which is I believe this is Cabourg here. We've got probably the estuary somewhere here. This is Sword Beach. This might be the estuary where we're heading now. So according to our flight plan, we're going to just take a little bit of a left bank here coming up to get ourselves in this area over here somewhere. So let's okay, so I think we got the lights up ahead is Caen. This area, dark area to our left, looks looks like the area we want to head towards. So just take it off autopilot. Okay, I think the lights on the nose here could be used. Yeah, this is the estuary here, where those bright lights are, just on the nose. That's Ouistreham port. We got Cabourg here on the left, the lights, and I think you can just see this here. It might be the Dives estuary here. Yeah, so we can definitely see the Orne estuary. So we want to carry on basically on this heading here. We can see Caen in the distance. So let's yeah, I think we head just about here. When we hit the coast, we'll cut the engines and we'll go into the dive. We're a little high, so just pull back and descend. So presumably at this point, this is when Denis Edwards mentions that they could hear the flak. So presumably there is bomber formations ahead of us. And they're all getting excited. They've got a lot of nervous energy. And we're coming over the coast now. I think we head on a south. Okay, so coming over the coast, we're going to have flak coming up. This seems like a good place. To cut the engines. Okay, so guys, so the Halifax bombers had a wire down the rope. And they would have told the glider pilots exactly the height and the bearing that they're on. So here we go. And we are going to dive. We need to dive now and get below the cloud height. So now, the co-pilot here, Ainsworth, would have started his stopwatch as he crossed. The coastline, and we'll be looking to fly south for a certain time. Scrubbing the height as quickly as we can. Let's get below this cloud so we can get. But you can see the importance here of keeping everything simple. Trying to keep it on a southerly direction. Now, we come out from a cloud here. Let's assume then that Jim's told us to turn right. So we're going to head west, directly west. So we're heading west. We're looking now for the river. Keeping our speed up. Now, I believe those he was supposed to be able to see this forest area. I think we're over it now. We're at 1,500 feet. Okay, so I can make out the river here. But my speed is very low. coming up on 1,200 feet. Just about make out the river. Yep, so here comes the river here. Our height is 1,000 feet. We're just gonna get to this from below 1,000 feet now. Speed is 90. Coming up on the river now. Caen on our left. Right, so this is the river. So we'll begin our bank now. We're going to try and find our target. I think that light there is the target. I think we're going to be too fast. Putting in loads of flaps. Okay. I think that light there, or might possibly be, or it could be here, couldn't it? Maybe we've overflown. This is it here. Oh no, that's a real bridge. Okay, I think it's here. Okay, right, so let's just pause straight away. Well, we're on the ground. And let's have a look now at, let's make it light. And see how bad it was. Wow. Okay, we're on the wrong we're on the wrong river. So what did we thought was the river? Was it the road we thought we were going down? This is Horsa Bridge here. So we crashed on the wrong side of Horsa Bridge. What we were aiming for was here. So actually what we did, we must have mistaken the road for the canal. And anyway, we overshot by a long way. We were aiming for this spot here. I know we crashed. This is where we were trying to get to. So you can appreciate the skill of these glider pilots. I mean, but this is where they ended here. Their target here, and they crashed here. And this is, I think there was a fence at this point. So we will do this again at some point. I wanted to show the gliders 4, 5, and 6 approach, but our approach we ended not disastrously. I mean, I think some people might have survived, and we would have been able to get to Horsa and then to Pegasus Bridge itself. But whether that error would have meant that the bridge was blown up, it's possible. So that is that was the experience that was coming into land in a glider on D-Day, and how difficult it was. In the next episode, as I say, we'll look at glider 4, 5, and 6's attempt. But whilst we're here, let me just say something about gliders 1, 2, and 3. And we'll talk about what happens after the landing. Gliders 2 and 3, they must have had they had a 1 minute separation. They probably did that somewhere over before release. From some reports, I think Howard mentioned that when they were discussing these events in later reunions, it's what happens is glider 2 ends up probably about here, or somewhere around here. There's an actual marker somewhere, and then glider 3 ends up in between 1 and 2, and it's believed that when they were talking about it later, that gliders 2 came in and was approaching, and actually glider 3 overtook them on the landing, and that's what made glider 3 try to avoid them and crash. And one guy actually drowned in this pond here. But I think 2 people were. There's lots of concussion happened. I think a lot of people must have hit their head on the top of the glider. So a lot of concussion happened, and as I say, one guy drowned. And in later episodes, we'll talk about the actual operation when they take this bridge. So in the next part, then we'll be looking at gliders 4, 5, and 6. And their approach in their landing zone was actually here, in these fields here on the right hand side. So their job, in a certain sense, was as glider pilots was a little bit easier, because they could literally use the canal as a runway to guide them in. And we'll have a go on that one in next week's show. So I'd like to end the flight there. And thank you for listening and watching. I hope you enjoy these. I will see you next week